Hello, friend. I want to tell you something that might surprise you. Something that, once you hear it, will completely change how you think about the way you sleep or struggle to sleep every single night. You're not broken. Your sleep isn't failing because you're doing something wrong or because there's something defective about your brain or your body. The truth is far more interesting than that. The truth is, you're trying to sleep in a way that humans were never actually designed to sleep. And once you understand how we used to rest, how our ancestors slept for hundreds of thousands of years before the modern world changed everything, I think you might feel something unexpected. Not frustration, but relief. Maybe even a kind of homecoming. Tonight, we're going on a journey together. We're going to discover why you don't sleep the way your great-great-great-grandparents slept. Why the 8-hour block of unconsciousness we've been taught to expect is actually a modern invention. Why waking up in the middle of the night doesn't mean something is wrong with you. And along the way, I think you're going to feel some of that ancient wisdom settling into your bones. Some of that old, deep knowing about what rest really means. But first, let's get you comfortable. Find the most peaceful position you can imagine. Not the position you think you should sleep in, but the one your body is actually craving right now. Maybe that means shifting onto your side, or adjusting your pillow, or pulling your blanket up a little higher. Listen to your body. It knows what it needs far better than your conscious mind does. Good. Now, dim the lights if you can. Our ancestors lived by firelight and starlight, not by the harsh blue glow of screens and LED bulbs. So create that softer atmosphere for yourself. Let the modern world fade. Let the gentle darkness welcome you the way it welcomed every human who came before you. Take a deep breath with me. In through your nose slowly, filling your lungs the way our ancestors did when they finally allowed themselves to rest at the end of a long day. And out through your mouth, releasing the pressure, the expectations, the belief that you need to sleep correctly. Again, in and out. Your sleep doesn't have to look like anyone else's. Your rest doesn't have to fit into neat 8-hour blocks. You don't have to force anything tonight. You just have to listen. And perhaps, along the way, you'll remember something your body has always known, but that the modern world made you forget. So settle in now. We have all night. We're going to travel back through time, through the history of human sleep, discovering what changed and why. And I think you'll find it's not a story of progress, but a story of loss, and maybe, just maybe, of rediscovery. Let's begin. Here's something that will sound strange at first. For most of human history, people didn't sleep through the night. Not the way we try to now. Not in one long, unbroken stretch from bedtime to morning. They slept in 2 shifts. 2 separate periods of sleep, separated by an hour or 2 of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night. And this wasn't insomnia. This wasn't a sleep disorder. This was normal, natural, expected. Let me take you there. Let me show you what this looked like. We're in a small farming village in medieval England, perhaps 600 years ago, long before electricity, long before artificial light, long before anyone expected to sleep in one continuous block through the night. It's winter, the kind of winter where darkness comes early, around 4 in the afternoon, and doesn't lift until 8 the next morning. 16 hours of darkness. Far too long for any human to sleep continuously, and our ancestors knew this. They worked with it rather than fighting against it. Let's follow one person through this night. A woman we'll call the weaver, because that's her trade. She creates cloth on a large loom in her cottage, skilled work that requires patience and attention. She's in her 30s, married, mother of 3 children, part of a small community where everyone knows everyone else's business and life follows rhythms that have been the same for countless generations. The sun has set. The family has eaten their evening meal, bread and pottage, a thick stew of vegetables and grains, simple food but filling. The children have been tucked into their shared bed in the loft, their sleepy voices gradually quieting until there's only the sound of gentle breathing. The weaver and her husband sit by the fire for a while, tending to small tasks. She's spinning wool, the spindle turning in her practiced hands, creating thread for tomorrow's weaving. He's repairing a tool, working by firelight. The movement's automatic after years of similar evenings. They talk a little about the weather, about the neighbors, about whether they'll have enough stored food to last until spring. Small talk, comfortable talk, the kind that fills the spaces of a long marriage. But they're both getting drowsy. The fire is warm. The work is meditative. And it's only been dark for a few hours, but already their bodies are responding to the darkness, to the quiet, to the absence of stimulation. This is important to understand. Without artificial light, the human body naturally begins producing melatonin, the sleep hormone, as soon as the sun sets, not at some arbitrary bedtime determined by work schedules and alarm clocks, but in response to the actual darkness. So by 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, the weaver is genuinely sleepy, not forcing it, not trying to make herself tired, just naturally ready for rest. She banks the fire carefully, covering the coals so they'll stay alive through the night, providing a small amount of warmth and light. Her husband does a final check of the door and shutters, making sure the cottage is secure. Then they climb into bed together. A large wooden frame with a straw mattress, layers of wool blankets, and heavy curtains that can be drawn around it to trap warmth. They settle in close together, her back against his chest, sharing body heat in the cold winter night. And within minutes, they're both asleep. This is the first sleep, what medieval people call the first sleep, or sometimes dead sleep. Deep, restorative, the body doing its essential repair work. They sleep like this for 3, maybe 4 hours. Deep and dreamless at first, then gradually lighter, moving through the natural cycles of sleep that the body has been programmed for over millions of years of evolution. And then, around midnight, the weaver wakes up, not suddenly, not with alarm or confusion, just gradually becoming aware that she's awake, that her eyes are open in the darkness, that she's emerged from sleep without any particular reason or urgency. This is a watch, the quiet hour, the space between the two sleeps. And here's what's crucial. She doesn't panic. She doesn't lie there thinking, "Oh no, I woke up. Something must be wrong. I need to get back to sleep immediately or I'll be exhausted tomorrow." She doesn't start calculating how many hours she has left or worrying about her sleep being broken. She just accepts it. This is normal. This is what humans do. You sleep, you wake, you rest quietly for a while, you sleep again. Her husband is awake too. She can tell by the change in his breathing, by the way he shifts slightly beside her. They don't speak at first, just lie there together in the darkness, comfortable and peaceful. This is the hour that historians have discovered in their research through old diaries and court records and medical texts from the pre-industrial era. This mysterious watch that people referred to, this period of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night that was so commonplace that most people didn't even bother to write about it in detail. It was just what you did. Some people used this hour for prayer, some for quiet conversation with their spouse, some for creative work. Many writers and thinkers throughout history reported that their best ideas came during this nighttime wakefulness, when the mind was relaxed and open in a way it never was during the busy day. Some people made love. The dark quiet of the watch was considered an ideal time for intimacy, when children were asleep and the demands of daily life felt distant. And some people, like the weaver, just rested, thought quiet thoughts, let their minds wander without direction or purpose. She thinks about her weaving, about a pattern she's been trying to perfect. In a relaxed state of the watch, the solution to a problem that's been frustrating her suddenly becomes clear. She makes a mental note to try it tomorrow. She thinks about her middle child, who's been having nightmares lately. Nothing serious, just a phase, but she worries the way mothers always worry. She makes a plan to tell the child a different bedtime story tomorrow, something soothing rather than exciting. She thinks about nothing in particular, her mind drifting like a leaf on water, peaceful and unanchored. Her husband whispers something to her, an observation about a neighbor, something mildly funny that makes her smile in the darkness. They talk for a few minutes, their voices low and intimate, sharing thoughts they didn't have time or privacy for during the busy day. Then the talking fades naturally, and they lie in comfortable silence, and gradually, without any effort or intention, they both drift back towards sleep. The second sleep, lighter than the first, more dreamful, carrying them through the remaining hours of darkness until dawn begins to lighten the sky. This was normal for hundreds of thousands of years. This pattern of first sleep, watch, second sleep, this rhythm that worked with human biology rather than fighting against it. And here's what's important. People didn't feel sleep deprived. They didn't struggle with insomnia the way we do now, because their sleep wasn't broken. It was complete, just structured differently. The watch wasn't a problem to be solved. It was part of the natural pattern. Modern sleep scientists have studied this. They've taken people away from artificial light, let them sleep according to their natural rhythms. And guess what pattern emerges? First sleep, watch. Second sleep, over and over again. This is how we're designed to rest. This is the pattern our bodies want to follow, when we're not forcing them into artificial schedules determined by alarm clocks and work shifts and the expectation that sleep should happen in one solid 8-hour block. So, if you wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, if you find yourself awake at 2 or 3 in the morning, mind clear, not anxious, just awake, you're not broken. You're not an insomniac. You're experiencing the watch, the quiet hour, the space between sleeps that your ancestors knew intimately, that they valued, that they used for prayer and contemplation, and intimacy and creativity. You're not doing anything wrong. You're remembering something ancient. So if the two-sleep pattern was natural, was normal, was how humans slept for most of our history, what changed? When did we start expecting ourselves to sleep in one long block? And why? The answer involves candles, and then oil lamps, and then electricity. It involves the Industrial Revolution and factory shifts and the demand for a workforce that could be productive for as many hours as possible. It involves a gradual transformation of night from a natural period of rest into something that could be colonized, conquered, made productive. Let me show you how it happened. We're moving forward in time now, to the late 1700s and early 1800s, to the cusp of the Industrial Revolution. We're in a growing city, London perhaps, or Manchester, where everything is changing faster than anyone can fully comprehend. The streets are being lit for the first time, not with electric lights, not yet, but with gas lamps that burn through night, creating pools of light in the darkness, pushing back the ancient night in ways that would have seemed like magic to people just a generation earlier. Coffee houses are staying open later, illuminated by whale oil lamps. Theaters are performing for evening crowds. The night is becoming colonized, made safe, made productive. And inside homes, the well-off are installing better lighting. Not just candles, which are expensive and burn quickly, but oil lamps that provide steadier, brighter light. The darkness that used to be absolute, that used to enforce rest whether you wanted it or not, is now negotiable. Let's follow someone through this transitional time. A merchant's wife, living in a townhouse in the city, experiencing the beginning of the end of the old sleep patterns without fully realizing what's being lost. She's reading by lamplight, a novel, one of those newfangled entertainments that the older generation disapproves of. It's 9 o'clock in the evening, and 100 years ago, she would have been deep in her first sleep already. But the lamp on her table provides enough light to read by, and the book is engaging, and she's not particularly tired yet despite the darkness outside. Her husband is downstairs in his study, working on accounts. The children are asleep, but she herself is still awake, still active, pushing her bedtime later and later because she can, because the light allows it. When she finally does go to bed, around 11 o'clock, she's tired enough to fall asleep quickly, and she sleeps through the night, all the way through 7 or 8 hours without waking, because she went to bed later, because she's more deeply tired, because the pattern is already beginning to shift. And here's the thing, she doesn't think about this change, doesn't mourn the loss of the watch, the quiet hour between sleeps, because it's happening so gradually, over years and decades, that no single person notices a transformation. One generation talks about first sleep and second sleep as normal parts of life. The next generation barely mentions it. The generation after that has forgotten entirely that humans ever slept any other way. But the real transformation comes with the Industrial Revolution, with factories that need to run as many hours as possible to be profitable, with shift work that demands workers be alert and productive during specific hours, regardless of their natural rhythms. Picture a factory in Manchester in the 1830s. Hundreds of workers, many of them women and children, working 12 or 14-hour shifts in the noise and heat and danger of early industrial machinery. They're being forced into new rhythms, not the natural rhythms of light and dark, of first sleep and second sleep, but the artificial rhythms of the factory whistle. Up at 5 in the morning, regardless of how you slept. Work until 6 in the evening. Sleep when you can, however you can, fitting rest into the narrow windows that industrial capitalism allows. And when these workers struggle to sleep, when they lie awake exhausted but unable to fall asleep on command, when they wake in the middle of the night and can't drift back off because their bodies are confused by the disrupted rhythms, they're told it's their fault. They're not trying hard enough. They're not disciplined enough. There must be something wrong with them. The idea that sleep should happen in one block, at specific times determined by work schedules rather than natural body rhythms, becomes enforced not just by necessity, but by moral judgment. Good workers sleep efficiently. Productive workers don't waste time with old-fashioned patterns like the watch. By the late 1800s, when electricity begins to spread, the transformation is nearly complete. Thomas Edison, who famously claimed that sleep was a waste of time, that 4 or 5 hours should be sufficient for anyone, promotes his light bulbs as a way to extend productive day, to push back the darkness even further. We will make electricity so cheap that only the rich will burn candles, he supposedly said. And he was right. Electric light becomes ubiquitous, affordable, inescapable. The night, which had been a natural boundary, a time when humans had to rest whether they wanted to or not, becomes just another part of the day. Work shifts run 24 hours. Entertainment is available at all hours. The darkness that used to enforce rest is conquered, defeated, made irrelevant. And we tell ourselves this is progress. This is civilization. This is what separates us from our primitive ancestors who had to sleep when it got dark like animals. But our bodies never got the memo. Our bodies are still programmed for the old rhythms, still producing melatonin when the sun sets, still wanting to sleep in 2 shifts with a quiet watch between them, still craving darkness and silence and natural cycles. And when we force our bodies into 8-hour blocks determined by alarm clocks, when we suppress the watch with sleeping pills and anxiety about broken sleep, when we flood our evenings with blue light from screens that trick our brains into thinking it's still daytime, is it any wonder that so many of us struggle to sleep? We're not broken. We're just being asked to sleep in a way that goes against hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. And here's the cruel irony. We're told that 8 hours of unbroken sleep is natural and healthy and what we should be striving for. But 8 hours of forced unconsciousness, time to match work schedules rather than natural body rhythms, is actually the least natural sleep pattern humans have ever attempted. The watch, the quiet waking in the middle of the night, the two sleep pattern that we now call insomnia and treat as a disorder, that's natural. That's what our bodies want to do. But we've forgotten. We've lost the knowledge. We've been taught to fight against our own biology and then blame ourselves when the fight is exhausting. Maybe it's time to remember, to reclaim, to give ourselves permission to sleep like humans instead of like machines. So we've lost the natural sleep patterns. We've conquered the night. We've extended a productive day far beyond what our ancestors could have imagined. But what have we lost in the process? What does it cost us, this war against darkness and natural rhythms? Let me take you into the life of someone living now, in our modern world, struggling with sleep in ways that would have been incomprehensible to their ancestors. Her name doesn't matter. Let's just call her the sleepless one, because that's how she thinks of herself these days. She's in her 30s, works a demanding job in a city, lives alone in an apartment where the streetlights outside never fully let the darkness in. It's 10:30 p.m. on a weeknight, and she should be winding down for bed. She has to be up at 6:30 a.m. tomorrow, which means if she falls asleep by 11, she'll get 7.5 hours, which is close enough to the recommended 8 that she shouldn't feel too terrible. But here's what's actually happening. She's been scrolling on her phone for the past hour, the blue light from the screen suppressing her melatonin production, telling her brain it's still daytime. Keep alert, stay awake. She's not even particularly enjoying what she's looking at, just scrolling, numbing, avoiding the transition to sleep. Because here's the thing nobody talks about. She's afraid of going to bed, not afraid of sleep itself, but afraid of lying there awake, staring at the ceiling, watching the numbers on her clock change, feeling the anxiety build as she calculates and recalculates how many hours she has left, how exhausted she'll be tomorrow if she doesn't fall asleep soon. Right now, immediately, she's been dealing with this for years. Insomnia, her doctor called it, and prescribed pills that left her groggy and strange. Sleep hygiene, the internet told her, with its endless list of rules. Same bedtime every night, no screens before bed, cool darkroom, no caffeine after noon, regular exercise but not too close to bedtime, meditation, relaxation techniques, cognitive behavioral therapy. She's tried everything, and some of it helps marginally. But the fundamental problem remains. She can't consistently sleep in one 8-hour block, time precisely to fit her work schedule, without waking up in the middle of the night. Tonight, she finally forces herself to put down the phone at 11:15. She goes through her bedtime routine like a ritual, like magic she's trying to invoke. Brush teeth, wash face, set alarm, check that the door is locked, get into bed, close eyes, try to relax. Her bedroom is carefully optimized for sleep. Blackout curtains blocking the streetlights. White noise machine drowning out the city sounds. Temperature set to the recommended 68 degrees. Everything by the book, but her mind is racing. Thoughts tumbling over each other. Not even particularly anxious thoughts. Just active, planning tomorrow, rehashing today, random memories and observations, and worries all mixed together in an exhausting stream. She tries the breathing techniques, tries counting backward from 100, tries progressive muscle relaxation, tries visualizing a peaceful scene, and maybe, eventually, around midnight or 12:30, she drifts off, not peacefully, not naturally, but from sheer exhaustion, her mind finally giving up the fight. She sleeps for 3 or 4 hours. And then she wakes up. It's 3:17 a.m. according to the clock on her nightstand. That glowing accusation in the darkness. She's awake, clearly awake, mind alert, not particularly anxious, just awake. And here's where the real torture begins. Because she knows, she's been told by every sleep expert every article, every well-meaning friend that she should be sleeping now, that waking up at 3 a.m. is a sign something is wrong, that she needs to get back to sleep immediately or tomorrow will be ruined. So she lies there trying to force sleep, try and make her mind shut off, growing more and more anxious as the minutes tick by and sleep doesn't come. She checks her phone, a cardinal sin according to sleep hygiene rules, but she can't help it. Needs to know how much time she has left. 3:17 becomes 3:34, becomes 4:02. The window for adequate sleep is closing. The anxiety is building. Should she take a sleeping pill? But then she'll be groggy tomorrow. Should she get up? But they say you shouldn't get out of bed unless you've been awake for more than 20 minutes. And how long has it been? She's lost track. Maybe she should just keep trying to sleep. Finally, around 4:30, she drifts off again, sleeps fitfully until her alarm goes off at 6:30. Feeling like she's been hit by a truck, exhausted and anxious, and already dreading tonight when the whole cycle will repeat. This is her life. This is the modern sleep struggle. And she's not alone. Millions of people, maybe billions, are going through some version of this every single night. Now, let me tell you what would have happened to this exact same person if she'd been born 300 years ago, before we broke the natural sleep patterns. She would have gone to bed shortly after sunset, because darkness and limited artificial light would have made staying up both impractical and expensive. She would have fallen asleep easily because her body would have been producing melatonin naturally for hours already. She would have slept her first sleep, 3 or 4 hours of deep, restorative rest. Then she would have woken up right around the time she did tonight, 3 or 4 a.m. And instead of panicking, instead of lying there anxious about broken sleep and ruined tomorrows, she would have simply accepted it. This is a watch. This is normal. This is what humans do. She might have lain there thinking quiet thoughts. She might have prayed or meditated. She might have talked with a spouse or housemate. She might have gotten up for a little while, tended the fire, had a small snack, done some quiet work by candlelight, and then, after an hour or so, she would have felt the pull back towards sleep. The second sleep, lighter and dreamier, carrying her through until dawn. She would have slept a total of 7 or 8 hours, just like she's trying to do now, but it would have been distributed differently, structured according to natural rhythms, rather than forced into an artificial block. And she would have felt rested. Not perfect every day. Life has never been perfect, but generally okay. Not anxious about sleep, not afraid of bedtime, not exhausted and wired simultaneously. The only difference is the pattern, the acceptance of natural rhythms instead of the fight against them. Here's what modern sleep research is starting to understand. That middle of the night waking, that period of quiet alertness that we now call insomnia, might actually be normal, healthy, even a remnant of the watch, trying to emerge despite our best efforts to suppress it. Some researchers have suggested that our epidemic of insomnia might actually be our bodies trying to return to the natural 2 sleep pattern, and our anxiety about it is what creates the actual problem. Think about it. If you wake up at 3 a.m. and think, this is normal, this is fine, I'll just rest quietly for a while, and then I'll drift back to sleep, that's probably exactly what will happen. But if you wake up at 3 a.m. and think, oh no, I'm awake, I'm broken, I'm failing at sleep, tomorrow will be terrible, I have to get back to sleep right now, then you trigger the stress response, flood your system with cortisol, and make it nearly impossible to drift back off. The problem isn't the waking. The problem is what we've been taught to think about the waking. So if our modern sleep patterns are making us miserable, if we're fighting against our own biology, if the natural 2 sleep rhythm is still trying to emerge despite centuries of suppression, what do we do about it? Can we go back? Should we even try? The answer is complicated. We can't simply return to medieval sleep schedules. Most of us have jobs and commitments that require us to be awake and functional during specific hours. We can't eliminate artificial light entirely, and probably wouldn't want to even if we could, but we can remember. We can reclaim some of the wisdom. We can stop fighting against our biology and start working with it. Let me show you what this might look like. Imagine the sleepless one from our last scene, but this time with different knowledge, different expectations, a different relationship to her own sleep. It's the same night, same apartment, same job, same basic life circumstances. But something has shifted in how she thinks about rest. She still scrolls on her phone for a while in the evening. She's human. She's tired. She wants to decompress. But around 9 p.m., she starts dimming the lights in her apartment. She switches her devices to night mode, reducing the blue light. She's not rigid about it, not following a strict rule, just gently signaling to her body that evening is here, that rest is approaching. Around 10 p.m., she starts feeling genuinely sleepy, earlier than she used to, because the dimmed lights have allowed her melatonin production to begin naturally. She doesn't fight it, doesn't push through to finish one more episode or scroll for one more hour. She just goes to bed, and she falls asleep easily because her body is ready, because she's working with her biology instead of against it. She sleeps for 3 or 4 hours, and then she wakes up just like before. Around 2:30 or 3 a.m., mind clear, not anxious, just awake. But this time, instead of panicking, instead of immediately checking the clock and calculating hours and triggering the stress response, she remembers, this is the watch. This is normal. This is what humans do. She doesn't turn on bright lights. That would wake her too fully, make the return to sleep more difficult. But she does allow herself a small reading light, dim and warm-toned. She keeps a book beside her bed specifically for these moments. Not something stimulating or exciting, but something gentle, contemplative, the kind of thing that occupies her mind without energizing it. She reads for a while. 20 minutes, maybe 40, her mind wanders. She thinks about her day, about her plans, about nothing in particular. She's not trying to force sleep. She's just resting, being awake in a restful way, the way people used to do during the watch. And gradually, without trying, without forcing, she feels it happening. The pull back towards sleep, the heaviness returning to her limbs, the book becoming hard to focus on. She sets aside, turns off the small light, settles back into her pillow, and within minutes, she's drifting back into sleep, the second sleep, carrying her through until her alarm goes off. When she wakes in the morning, she doesn't feel perfectly rested. No one does, not even with the best sleep in the world. But she feels okay, not exhausted, not anxious about having failed at sleep. Just okay, and that's enough. This is what reclaiming rest looks like. Not forcing yourself back into some idealized medieval schedule. Not eliminating all modern conveniences, but simply giving yourself permission to sleep like a human instead of like a machine. Permission to go to bed when you're actually sleepy, even if it's earlier than you should. Permission to wake in the middle of the night without panicking, to use that hour for quiet reflection or gentle activity instead of anxious tossing and turning. Permission to let go of the rigid 8-hour expectation and trust that your body knows how to rest if you stop fighting it. Some practical wisdom from the past that we can reclaim. Dimming lights in the evening, the way our ancestors did when candles burned down and fires banked. Not complete darkness necessarily, but softer, warmer light that allows melatonin production to begin naturally. Going to bed when you're sleepy, rather than at some arbitrary bedtime determined by work schedules. Your body will tell you when it's ready for sleep if you listen. If you wake in the middle of the night, allowing yourself to be awake without anxiety. This is the watch. This is normal. Rest quietly. Think gentle thoughts. Read something peaceful. and trust that sleep will return when it's ready. Not checking clock obsessively, not calculating hours remaining, not triggering the stress response that makes return to sleep nearly impossible. Creating a relationship with darkness and quiet, allowing yourself to experience real night rather than floodlit artificial day extended into all hours. And here's something beautiful. When you stop fighting against your natural rhythms, when you give yourself permission to sleep like a human, the anxiety about sleep often dissolves on its own. Because the real problem was never the waking. It was the belief that the waking meant something was wrong with you. Once you understand that humans are supposed to wake in the middle of the night, that the watch is part of our natural pattern, that you're not broken or failing or doing something wrong, suddenly, that 3 a.m. waking becomes peaceful instead of frightening. It becomes a gift, a quiet hour for reflection, for rest, for being with yourself in the gentle darkness, the way it was for thousands of years before we forgot. You don't have to sleep in one 8-hour block to be healthy. You don't have to force yourself into artificial patterns that go against your biology. You don't have to fight against yourself. You just have to remember to reclaim, to trust that your body knows what it's doing, even if it doesn't match what the modern world expects. You can sleep like your ancestors slept, in rhythm with darkness and light, in 2 peaceful periods with a quiet watch between them, in a way that honors your humanity instead of denying it. You can rest the way humans were always meant to rest. And so, we come to the end of our journey through the history of sleep. We've seen how humans use a rest in rhythm with darkness, in 2 peaceful sleeps, with a sacred watch between them. We've seen how that pattern was broken by artificial light, by industrial demands, by the belief that sleep should be efficient, should be controlled, should fit neatly into 8-hour blocks. And we've seen the cost, the epidemic of sleeplessness, the anxiety about rest, the fight against our own biology. But we've also seen the possibility of remembering, of reclaiming, of sleeping like humans again. And tonight, right now, you have that opportunity. You don't have to force anything. You don't have to follow rigid rules. You don't have to sleep correctly. You just have to let go. Let go of the expectations, the pressure, the belief that there's a right way and a wrong way. Your body knows how to rest. It's been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years. Trust it. Feel yourself settling into this moment, into this darkness, into this peace. If you sleep all the way through, that's beautiful. If you wake in the middle of the night, that's beautiful too. That's the watch. That's the quiet hour. That's your body remembering its ancient wisdom. Either way, you're not broken, you're not failing, you're just being human. And being human is enough. Let your breathing slow and deepen. Let your body sink into rest. Let your mind drift toward sleep. You are safe. You are held by the same darkness that held your ancestors. You are part of an ancient pattern, a rhythm that stretches back through all of human history. Sleep comes when it's ready. Rest happens when you stop fighting. Peace arrives when you remember that you're not a machine. You're human, and humans have always known how to rest. Sleep now, dear friend, in your own way, in your own rhythm, in your own time. First sleep, or second sleep, or all the way through. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're here, that you're resting, that you've given yourself permission. The night will hold you. The darkness will keep you safe. And sleep will come like it always has, like it always will. Rest, restore, remember, you are sleeping like a human, and that is perfect. Sleep